We're looking at the Chinese witch hazel now, Hamamelis mollis. This was first introduced to the Veitch Nursery in 1878 by Charles Maurice, who was collecting for the Veitch Nursery whilst in China. They didn't realise it was mollis until 20 years later, and this particular one was then named after the nursery where it was growing, Coomwood. So this is the first introduction of the Chinese witch hazel. In 1908, Ernest Wilson, when working for the Arnold Arboretum in Boston, Massachusetts, sent seed in from China from one of his collection trips in China. It's quite a large quantity of seed, and the Arnold Arboretum distributed seed and plants to a lot of locations, and one of them was the Hillier Arboretum. So this particular one has been called German's Gold. It's a lovely rich yellow, wonderfully scented. Another cultivar that arose from Wilson's introduction of seed is Wisley Supreme, and this was a plant that was growing at Wisley, possibly came up from Exbury Gardens. It's slightly lighter in colour than German's Gold, and is perhaps one of the most floriferous. And when we had a recent woody trial for the Royal Horticultural Society, this form of mollis was awarded a Award of Garden Merit as being the best mollis available. The Chinese witch hazel also found its way into Japan. Not sure of dates or anything like that, but there was connection between Japan and China long before Western botanists got out to the east. And this is one that was it came from the Wada Nursery, and it's called Iwado. Slightly smaller flowers, but a rich yellow colour. One of the great things about Hamamelis mollis is its scent, and all the different cultivars of Hamamelis mollis have got a wonderful scent, sort of citrusy scent. The second one from Japan is this one, which has come from Koshiro Wada's nursery, and it's called Hamamelis mollis imperialis, and it's got the largest flowers of any form of Hamamelis mollis. This particular row here is about 17 seedlings of Hamamelis mollis that I introduced from Lushan Botanical Garden in China about 20 years ago. There are all slight differences in them, and this particular one here I've selected because of its good sized flowers, which I've named Angel. One of the original introductions of Hamamelis japonica is this one here called Arborea, and this has got a golden yellow flowers. So as you can see, there is quite a bit of variation in the flower colour of Hamamelis japonica. Also one of the original introductions by von Siebold from Japan. This form of Hamamelis japonica, Varflovo purpurescens, has got this reddish staining from sort of halfway down the petal to the base. And this is where the red coloration comes in the hybrids, because when Hamamelis japonica and mollis were brought together in gardens, two forms of japonica on the left and mollis on the right, they hybridized, and this gave rise to the Hamamelis intermedia selections, and these are the ones that are mainly grown nowadays, having that hybrid vigour and easier to grow. This is a form of Hamamelis japonica called paleface, which has got these quite pale yellow flowers. This particular Hamamelis japonica is a clone called Brentry, and I found this in the Brentry part of the Hillier Arboretum as an unnamed plant, and it's very floriferous, and for a japonica, fairly large flowers. A noticeable thing about Hamamelis japonica compared to mollis is the more crinkled, twisted petals. Mollis tends to have straighter petals. The thing about Hamamelis japonica is that the flowers are more kind of twisted than what they are in Hamamelis mollis. But of course it's the second parent, as I mentioned, of the hybrid Hamamelis intermedia, and where the yellow coloration has come from. Japonica also tends to have quite good autumn colour in its foliage, which has been transmitted to some of the hybrids. This Hamamelis japonica here is one that was collected in the wild in the last 15 to 20 years by Lord Howick and an expedition from Kew. And as you can see, it has slightly deeper yellow flowers. This Hamamelis japonica is also one from the wild, and it's called Hamamelis japonica varmegalophila. Bit of a mouthful of a name. It's got very, very pale yellow flowers, and this was brought to me by Mikanori Ogisu, a famous Japanese botanist. A red-flowered hybrid here that was a seedling at Camelthorpe Arboretum in the time of Antoine Court, who was the previous owner before the de Gelder family. And this is one of the first hybrids to ever be named. It's called Ruby Glow, and is or has been one of the staple red flowered cultivars. One of the original intermediates that arose in Denmark is this one here called Nina, with very, very bright yellow flowers. Another Hamamelis intermedia that occurred as a spontaneous seedling at the Arnold Arboretum in North America, and was given the name Arnold Promise because it's very floriferous. It takes a little bit more towards the japonica with its parentage, but it's got wonderful scent and nice autumn colour. Another famous place for the introduction of Hamamelis intermedia cultivars is Westerstede in Germany by a man called Heinrich Bruntz, and this is the first seedling of his that was ever named. It was named by a Dutch nurseryman, and this is Orange Beauty. So nice golden yellow flowers and well scented, this plant. Not all intermediates have scent, but this one is very good. Right, the hybrid between the Chinese witch hazel and the Japanese witch hazel is called Hamamelis times intermedia, and there's a wonderful colour range in this particular hybrid group, from yellow through to really good reds. They flower over quite a long period as well. One of the early yellows is this one called Advent. It doesn't flower just before Christmas, as the name would suggest, but it is out from Christmas through early January, mid-January. This is one of the largest flowered hybrids, and it's called Harry. And this was named, again, it was raised in Belgium, and named for Harry Van Trier, who was one time curator of the Countdown Arboretum. So lovely, large, showy flowers. Nice yellow with a little bit of reddish staining at the base of the petal. This is one of my favourite coppery orange intermediate hybrids, and this is called Yelena, and it was named for Yelena de Belder, her husband Robert selected this and named it after her at the Countdown Arboretum in Belgium. It's such a lovely colour that you feel on a cold day you can warm your hands against the flowers. This is one of my favourite red flower cultivars as well. This is one called Livia, which is actually named for the daughter of Diane. So the family, the Belder family, have got lots of witch hazels named after them. In fact, all of the family have. They're a unique colour in the red flower ones. A lovely sort of carmine red colour. Not as much has happened with Hamamelis intermedia in the UK until recently, but one of the most well-known plants of all is Hamamelis intermedia pallida. The original plant is still on Battleston Hill at Wisley, but it's very floriferous. As you can see, masses of clusters of flowers, and the scent is absolutely gorgeous. If you only had room for one Hamamelis, I think this would be it. On a dull day, it still stands out, and when you've got a blue sky, wow, fantastic. I've been fortunate enough to know the de Belder family at Countdown and Hamamelis in Belgium, and I was at Hamamelis one day going round with Yelena de Belder, and we came across the old nursery where a lot of the seedlings were raised. I looked at this one and said, God, it's the colour of gingerbread. Didn't think any more about it. It wasn't a name plant at that particular time. 3 or 4 years later, she wrote a book about the winter flowering plants. When I bought the book, lo and behold, in there was Hamamelis intermedia gingerbread. Lovely story from a lovely family. This is another seedling from Hamamelis in Belgium, and on my frequent visits there, this is one particular plant that I really liked, and Daniel de Belder named this Chris, not just for myself but also for my good friend Chris Sanders. We spent many trips together looking at witch hazels in Europe. Right. Naturally, I would start sowing seeds of Hamamelis myself, and this was the first one I ever named, simply because not the largest flowers, but the most intense red I've seen in any witch hazel. It looks particularly brilliant when you've got winter sun shining, slanting through the flowers, and this I've named Foxy Lady. Another seedling which has got very interesting red flowers of mine, and I'm thinking about this one, perhaps of giving it a name sometime in the future. So far I have named one or two. Burning Desire, which is a very orange flower one, not quite out yet, it's quite late flowering, and probably more to come in the future. It takes a while for a seedling to be raised up and finally judged to be worthwhile. So you're talking about a good 10 to 15 years before you can be absolutely sure it's worth introducing, amongst the many cultivars there are already. A species from North America is Hamamelis vernalis, the vernal witch hazel, or sometimes called the Ozark witch hazel, because it's found on the Ozark Plateau in the USA. Very tiny flowers, but absolutely wonderful scent, and many of the plants have wonderful altering colour. The flower colour is very variable, from pale yellow through to almost a kind of purplish colour, certainly purplish red. Reddish flowered ones is Hamamelis vernalis Cohanky red, and as you can see it's almost got that sort of hint of purplish or lilac in the red coloration of this flower. This orange flowered one is called Orange Spangles, and this was named by Pat Edwards, who had a national collection of Hamamelis, and I visited her a few times 25-30 years ago. Sadly she's no longer with us, but she was very keen on witch hazels.